All right. I don't know if coffee and popcorn make the best combination, but
I mean, I've had worse combinations, to be honest.
Hey, man, me too.
Oh, yes.
And, it's putting into the perfect setting for the perfect spook mood, so, All right. So, how's it going, ladies and gentlemen, people of the world, and everybody listening to this podcast? Thank you again for listening in. This is Donald Kaczynski, and with me,
Hannah Kubiak.
and this is the General Geekery Podcast, the show where we talk about everything geek-related, geeky things we just want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, how you doing, Hannah? How was Halloween for you?
Pretty awesome. I went to the usual big Halloween party that a bunch of theater people have, and, I went as Vanya Hargreaves, and I got, weird contact lenses and spooked some people out. It was really fun, because, nobody would make eye contact with me. Yeah.
Dang.
It was fun. It was great.
Mine was a little mellow. I had to help, had to help out with a after work event at work. We were doing a little Halloween party for the local kids. So yeah, I did that, and then sat home, watched some classic horror movies, and had some chocolate. Speaking of which, that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. Just
chocolate.
Well, okay, maybe we'll bring in some chocolate later on, but that's not what I'm talking about. Horror films.
Oh, cool.
Everything we love about horror films, whether it be tropes, variations, horror films have existed for as long as cinema has existed. I think, one of the earliest horror films, I watched was the original Phantom of the Opera.
Oh my gosh, I was just about to mention that. The silent one?
Yep, the silent one from 1925, Boris Karloff.
The only thing I remember about that one was that bit where she was singing on the stage, and then in the prompter's booth, his head came up, and she was the only one who could see him. It was so scary, even though there was no vocals or anything.
That's good stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And the thing is, the makeup for the Phantom, when he removed the mask, apparently, according to old reports that I've read through Wikipedia and IMDb pages and things like that, apparently
his actual face.
Yeah, that was his actual face, and he was using nothing but hooks and stuff to pull his nose back and everything like that,
Nice.
and manipulating the lighting to further enhance that. He was the guy who did the Phantom. I keep forgetting his name. But he was such a special effects master of manipulating his face. Excuse me. That literally people who saw the movie almost fainted from just the sight of it. When you compare that by most of today's standards, that's pretty tame.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. But that thing where he's in the booth and all that was so free. That, as a person who is in theater and on stage all the time, one of my nightmares is being on stage and accidentally making eye contact with somebody who does not like me.
Oh, yeah.
I hate it. Because when you're on stage, you're just... You gotta sort of... To be an actor, you gotta be vulnerable, and...
Yeah, exactly.
There's some people where you just sort of put up this wall, and then if they're there, it's hard to get back into that mindset where you're sharing truth and your true self and all that. So, and
as a performer, and I can understand this too, whether you're an actor, a musician, or anything in between, there is nothing more vulnerable than being in front of a group of people on a stage, leaving yourself wide open. Whether emotionally or physically or anything in between, but luckily no one's pulled a gun on me yet, so...
Yeah.
Hold on. Knocking on wood on that one. Knocking on wood. I'm not jinxing us on that one.
Nope.
Yeah.
Alright, so I don't really know that much about horror movies. I wouldn't consider this to be one of my areas of geekery. I'm interested in it.
Well, I love film and cinema and stuff like that, so I've dabbled in a lot of different horror movies, some classics, some newer ones, and everything in between.
We both went what?
Yeah. No, you first.
Okay, what would you say is sort of give me a rundown of the sort of top horror films that you think everybody should see?
So they're for quintessential horror, obviously you gotta slasher films automatically come to mind whenever people think horror. You have your you have the original Friday the 13th. You have the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The original Halloween.
None of which I have seen.
Right. I actually saw the original Halloween the local movie theater that I live near, the Avalon, located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is the lovely city where we're recording this podcast right now.
Yep.
They do
triangulating. You're gonna find us, Donald.
Dang it! The dark web is on us.
No.
But literally, I went to I went there because for the month of October, they were doing special screenings for different horror movies, and on Halloween night, they did a midnight screening of the original Halloween movie with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Wow!
And honestly, it's really good seeing that on the big screen. Because for me, a great thing about old school horror movies like that is that they can scare you while at the same time being campy.
Right.
Campiness in old horror films are magnificent. Good campiness is hard to come by in today's horror market, because a lot of them are trying to be more brutal and realistic and everything like that. But it's you have to have a little bit of campiness sometimes in horror films in order to make it somewhat enjoyable.
Sometimes I kind of still have to maybe get into this, but I was trying to find something that was sort of horror, to watch, so that I had sort of a reference point for this conversation.
Right.
And so somebody had suggested that I watch American Horror Story. Which I saw a clip of when I was a teenager that put me off it for the longest time. It was from the circus one.
Okay.
With the lobster hand guy.
I think that one was Freak Show, but yeah.
Yeah. And I just happened to wander in when somebody was watching it, and it was the lobster hand guy with those women, sort of. If you know, you know. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it was that scene, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And I fled. And I never watched American Horror Story until just a couple of days ago. I was watching the very first one, The Murder House.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like I have to. Everyone I talk to is like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good," and I was watching it and I was thinking, why I am not really. I didn't find myself frightened or I wasn't pleasantly horrified. You know how when you watch a horror movie, you're kind of like, whoa, it is kind of
right,
kind of scary, but you enjoy it. But I was just kind of watching. I was like, ugh, I don't understand it. I feel like I have to.
Well, I can't.
Have you seen American Horror Story?
I have not.
Oh,
okay. Unfortunately, I'm in the same boat as you. A lot of people have been recommending it to me and everything like that. But for me, horror television shows can never really interest me for too long. That's how it was with me for The Walking Dead for a while. But then I stopped after a couple of seasons. But then again, I was also reading the comics for it, so that really didn't help things.
Yeah, I haven't been. I think I started the 5th season a while ago, and for some reason I just didn't get back to it. Sometimes if a show has too many seasons, I get intimidated and I don't watch it at all. Because I'm an extreme binger.
Right.
When I start to watch something, I literally cannot get anything done until I've finished binging the whole thing. So
yeah,
the fact that I got through Supernatural when there were 12 seasons is astonishing to me.
And it ends next year. And
yeah,
end of an era.
I'm both relieved and sad. I'm kind of those because those actors sort of kind of grew up and got older became middle-aged on this show.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, that's a show that I really like.
Yeah,
I watched it for my sister because it's her favorite. And
then you grew into liking it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's so great. Don't get me started. I just love a good story about brothers. I don't know why.
That's fair. That's fair. Brotherhood is always a nice topic to always bring up about.
Yeah.
But for me, when it comes to horror television shows, sometimes for me personally, I can't drive myself into the like experience of a horror television show as I can with a horror film.
Right.
Mainly because of like the small amount of time span and things like that, but like there are some exceptions. Like if I could get into American Horror Story, I could, but because apparently that's like really good for that kind of things. But generally, 9 times out of 10, like horror television shows usually almost drop the ball. Almost. I say almost with a grain of salt. I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but
well, nobody's listening yet.
Don't say that yet.
It's just me. I'm not really a flack giver, so...
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, when a lot of people think of, like, horror situations, like, in a general sense, they'll usually bring up the slasher films like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, things like that. Then you have more suspense. You have your more suspenseful kind of ones, like...
I like those better.
Yeah, the suspense ones are always great because it's usually the lead up to the eventual scare that usually puts people like in terrifying.
In the hospital.
Oh, that's what gets people terrified. That's what makes them start to freak out.
Yeah.
The master of like suspense like horror films like look no further than Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't think of that. Yeah. Alfred Hitchcock
like
was one of my favorite. When I was in high school, he was like my film hero kind of. Like Alfred Hitchcock is to film as J.R.R. Tolkien is to fantasy. Well, like that was where I got my start.
That's fair.
I was like, oh my gosh, Alfred Hitchcock, like the things he does with film, it's not just a film, it's got all sorts of underlying themes and stuff.
He puts a lot of subtlety in like a lot of his stuff. Like
except the birds. I don't understand the birds.
That one's a weird one by Hitchcock standards. I can totally agree with that.
Yeah, I usually watch the Alfred Hitchcock and I think, whoa, that was amazing, and this meant this, and it was linked to this, and oh my gosh. But then I watched the birds and I was just like, this is ridiculous. It's just birds. I don't understand. Yeah,
exactly. And then you get into his, like what many consider to be his magnum opus, which is of course Psycho. Like not only is it like one of the best like suspense horror films, it's a lot of people put it in like their top films of all time list.
Oh my gosh.
For a good reason, which I can understand. Especially if you have not seen it for the first time and you have no idea like the story behind it.
It totally had me. I was but yeah, the eventual murderer, I was like, they were my favorite.
Indeed. It also helps if you haven't watched Bates Motel before seeing Psycho.
Bates Motel, I saw that too. Yeah.
I it looks so good. Bates Motel looks so good, and I could get into it. But unfortunately, the thing is, whenever I see the kid that they chose to play the main character, all I can think about in my head is the time he was August Rush and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, he actually really looks like a kid from my hometown, which is why it freaks me out because that kid is so like sweet and quiet and kind, and this guy is kind of like Norman is kind of similar, but he's also got that sort of dark side.
Right, exactly. He's got like that mystery about him and everything like that, which carries throughout not only just Bates Motel but also in the original Psycho.
Speaking of carries throughout, what about Carrie?
Oh my goodness. Okay, all right. Now we're getting into Stephen King stuff. This is what I thrive on. Okay, hold on.
But Carrie, there's a couple of movies. I think the most recent one that was made, I watched that with my mom, which was the most awkward thing. We just finished that movie and we were like,
Carrie.
My mom and I watched it together alone, and we were both just like,
okay, I have to ask.
This is awkward. Yeah.
Which Carrie?
It was made in like 2012, maybe.
Okay, so you saw the recent remake of it.
Recent remake, yeah.
Okay, my this is just my opinion. You need to see the original Carrie from like 1976.
Yep, I agree too. I mean, I'm trying to think if it was just because me and my mom watched it together, and the whole time we're just kind of like, because of where we are. It was just like me and my mom watching a movie about this screwed up relationship between a girl and her mom.
Yeah.
And we're just sort of like glancing at each other, and just every once in a while, I'd be like, well, could be worse.
I mean, it could be worse. You
could be way worse.
You could have been me and my mother a few years back when we first started watching Game of Thrones. And then all the sex happened.
Yeah. Isn't it weird how, like, parents wandering through your home have that uncanny ability to wander in just as a sex scene has started?
Oh yeah. like that is a trope of real life that is just like, what the hell?
Yeah, how do they do that?
You know what's another really good
They have
like
a sexy sense.
hashtag sexy sense.
That's gonna be the thing that I get quoted on.
Who knows?
Damn it.
But another. Okay, so you talk about Carrie. Like honestly, like one of the biggest horror things that are related together but don't have any overarching connections are those that are based off Stephen King novels. And there's a lot of good horror films that exist that are based off of King's works.
Yep. I think Carrie might be the only one I've seen. I haven't seen it.
It can be a particular cup of tea.
It can.
True, that's true. Especially if you're talking either like the original like 90s television one with Tim Curry, which is it's not really that scary, but it's so campy that it's endearing.
Yeah.
But then you have like the recent theatrical releases, which I love part 1 to death. Like that might be like one of my favorite horror films of the decade.
Cool. Did you see part 2?
I did see part 2. It's not as good as the first one. I'm just putting that out there. Like I love aspects of it, but I think part 1 did it better.
Very few sequels live up to expectations.
That's true, especially in horror.
Yeah.
Especially in horror.
Because what are the odds? You know.
The only horror film that I can think of that surpassed the original, and I'm going way back on this, is Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh. Okay.
I'm going way back on this.
Wow. You know, I saw those way back in the day, but I haven't. Back in the day for me, a 20-something.
Yeah, it's been a few years for me too, but I remember The Bride of Frankenstein leaving a really big impression on me. Mainly because like a lot of like pop culture things related to Frankenstein come from that one in particular, especially the design of Frankenstein's bride. Like, oh my goodness.
Yep.
Like that is an iconic image if there ever was one, especially for the 1940s.
Right, yeah. With her hair and her like she's like a bird.
Screeching like a cat.
Oh man. Which coincidentally wore my spooky raven skull earrings today. Which none of you can see because we are in the veil, speaking to you from the veil.
Well, you know what? I can see it and I can appreciate it. So you know what? It fits the theme.
I knew we were talking about spooky stuff today, and I
she came prepared, folks.
Came prepared.
She came prepared.
Yep. Dressed for success.
Indeed. But
Wait. What was I going to say? It was something about Frankenstein's bride. Nah, I don't remember. It's gone.
But that's like another thing with like horror is like the monster movies. You got the old school monster movies. You got Frankenstein. You've got Dracula. You've got the Wolfman. Things like that. The old Universal monsters, which are staples. Even the campy ones that are just great.
Yeah.
And even like monster things like that also work their way into like modern stuff. Like there's like 3 Stephen King like horror films that use monsters. Like It is the obvious one.
Oh, that's what I was thinking of. Wasn't the clown from It based on John Wayne Gacy?
I can neither confirm nor deny, but without looking back on that, I think so.
He was a serial killer in Chicago?
I think so.
I don't know, but he was a clown.
I think so, but I don't know. But if you read the original, there is that book is so thick. The thickness of a book is about the thickness of this PlayStation system.
Okay,
it's
about half of a Brandon Sanderson novel.
Almost. It's over 1,000 pages.
Okay.
It's over 1,000 pages. And there's a lot of stuff in that book. You're just like, why is this happening? Why is it? And thank God. Thank God both adaptations for TV and film decided not to do the child orgy.
Yeah. I heard about that.
We don't need to see that.
Wasn't it supposed to be some sort of coming of age thing or whatever?
Kind of. Okay, so all right. Spoiler alert for those who haven't read the original novel of It.
There's a a child orgy.
Basically, when they were kids, after they defeated Pennywise the first time, if I remember this correctly, they were trying to figure a way out, but they couldn't figure it out because they were too spooked out. So Beverly, the girl in the group, decided that in order to embraven everyone, they should all have sex. That's like the general thing. It went into more detail. I was just like, what the fuck? Why?
Oh man.
But then again, like, King is notorious for doing like some weird stuff. But honestly, I was talking about this with a coworker of mine the other day because she's a huge she does a lot of film studies and things like that, and she works for does work for the Milwaukee Film Festival. We were talking about like our favorite Stephen King adaptations, and for me, I knocked the table. I brought mine down to a top 5.
Yeah, and
it goes in no particular order. And I'm doing the King horror films, not the other ones. Even though I love Shawshank Redemption so much, that one really isn't a horror film per se.
That's not Stephen King, is it?
Oh, it is.
That's Steven Spielberg.
No. Shawshank Redemption is a Stephen King story. It's one of his short stories.
Oh, okay.
So, my 5 favorite horror films by Stephen King, or based on Stephen King stories. Misery with Kathy Bates.
Ah! I've seen that. I've seen that. That spooked me out too.
I love that film to death. And honestly, like,
the hobbling.
Oh yes. She didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car.
Oh my gosh, I guess as a writer it spooked me out because
that is literally like overreactive fans. That is the worst nightmare for anybody who does performance art, writing, like anything like
being
that.
Being stalked. Having people do things in your name that you would not condone.
And honestly, if I remember...
What's his name? I Did It for Jodie. You tried to assassinate somebody because he loved Jodie Foster.
Right. All right. So that's one for me.
Yeah, Misery.
Like...
Misery!
1408.
Okay.
Which was released in like the late first decade of the 2000s. It's about a man who stays in a hotel room that's apparently cursed and like all the stuff that goes on with that. Which like films like that I always like when you stay like in a singular place and so much stuff happens.
Yeah.
Which leads me into my next one, which is a recent one that was a Netflix release, Gerald's Game.
Gerald's Game?
Yes. So, Gerald's Game, basically, the basic synopsis is, this couple go to a secluded house in the woods in order to have a romantic getaway. They try doing
that can't be good.
They try doing some BDSM stuff. The wife is handcuffed to the bed. During it, the husband has a heart attack and dies on the floor while the wife is handcuffed to the bed. And the entire film is her handcuffed to the bed and everything that's happening during that.
Holy...
I can't go into more detail than this because there's a lot.
That sounds amazing.
The person who directed it, Mike Flanagan, one of my recent favorite like horror directors. He did the Ouija Origin of Evil things. He did Oculus. He actually directed the recent Stephen King adaptation Dr. Sleep, which is supposed to be the sequel to my next one, The Shining.
The Shining. Oh, yeah, I've seen that too.
Okay, here's the thing. I say that I love The Shining, and like The Shining is a masterpiece in filmmaking.
Yep.
It's not the best horror film.
No, but it's. Oh man, there's so many things about it that are just. I don't know. I went to somebody's apartment complex the other day who their hallways looked like the hallways in The Shining.
Oh my god, were you expecting the twins to come out of nowhere?
I was walking along and I was like, so here's the kid on the tricycle.
Come play with us, Hannah.
Come play with us. Man, yeah. Oh. One of my favorite things to do is do like little creepy girl voices at people. And
oh man, that's so great.
Come and play with us.
ever and ever and ever. So good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
And
like, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to beat your brains out.
I'm going to bash them right the fuck in.
Didn't, like, that woman was truly terrified when they were filming that, I feel like. Wasn't she? Wasn't there something?
Yeah. See, that's the thing with, whenever, with most Kubrick films, he would really, like, irritate his actors to the point where, like, Nicholson was at the end of his rope.
Yeah.
And he tortured Shelley Duvall, like, throughout the entire...
Uh-huh. Oh.
And to the point where she didn't even know, like, Nicholson was going to come in with the axe.
That poor lady.
So, yeah, the crazy thing about that film was the kid who played Danny, the entire filming process, did not know that he was in a horror film.
Oh, man.
That is legitimate. That is right.
Is he just... Oh, man.
Kubrick worked with the kid in a way where the kid had no idea that it was going to be a horror film.
Wow.
And if you actually go back and like watch all of the different scenes that the kid is in, especially like the scene in the hallway with like the girls and everything like that, how it cuts back between both of them, like for only like one shot they're in the same scene and that's it.
Yeah.
It's just like, how did he keep this a secret from him? Like, did the parents know? That's what I want to know.
That it was a horror film?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Say, oh, let's go see the movie that little Johnny's in. And then that naked old woman comes out of the tub.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
That bothered me for a long time. I am a caregiver for the elderly.
Especially when it went all corpse-like?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Oh, that was disgusting.
That is the one scene in that movie that truly freaked me out. I'm like, why?
Naked old people are one of the scariest things.
Indeed. Indeed, for obvious reasons.
Oh my
but
gosh.
I mean, good god.
Yep.
Oh.
Whew.
I got a headache from that.
Grandma!
Why? No! I don't want to go back in the bathtub! No!
I wish I could become unseen again.
Oh my god. Okay, so...
Alright.
I forgot the fifth one. We were just having so much fun just like talking about The Shining.
You said Misery, The Shining, Gerald's Game,
It was that Gerald's Game, Oh, wait, okay. So, it was Gerald's Game. I did The Shining. 1408. Misery, and, this one's gonna be a little bit weird, but I just... Creep Show.
Oh, okay.
It's not a good horror film, but it is so Stephen King and how bat crazy it is. It's something to marvel at.
Yeah.
Like, I can't... words can't do that justice.
Yeah, okay.
It can only be experienced.
I'm writing these things down
I'm giving...
for myself. You're giving me sort of the...
I am guiding Hannah into the proper, like, ways for horror.
I've only seen a handful. I've seen more than I thought, though.
Yeah. Which always surprises you sometimes whenever you do, like, discoveries. Especially for me, myself. And I realized, like, leading up to this, I was like, there's, like, several different horror films, like, that a lot of people might not know that I've seen. Because, like, in recent years, I ventured outside of, like, regular Hollywood stuff into, other countries, like, Spain, Japan, things like that. Japanese horror films have a weird kind of, like, campiness and horror on their own that is just... What in the world?
Did you ever see Wax Museum?
Yes. That's unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, I only saw part of it where the whole thing was melting and they were, like, clawing through the wax or whatever.
Yep.
I don't really remember. It was one of those just watching TV all day because there was nothing to do kind of day.
Right.
I was like, what is this? Wax Museum? Also, there's a scene from some movie or show that maybe you can help me identify it because...
I can try.
When I was maybe like 7, I was watching this show and I have no idea what it was, but it was just this one scene that I remember that I have no idea what it's from. These people, I think it had to do with vampires. It may have been something from Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something.
Okay.
but they were trapping this vampire, I think, and they like filled a bathtub with garlic and flung her into it, and that was how they did that somehow. Like it was, I don't remember, but that's what it was. For some reason, it really disgusted me. I
don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay, maybe if somebody knows, if anybody's out there.
Creepy Hannah wants to know.
Creepy Hannah wants to know.
Oh, but yeah, it's like...
Tell me the secret.
And actually, the funny thing is, like a lot of, like, mainstream, Hollywood movies from, like, the past couple of years or so have, like, borrowed from, like, a lot of, like, foreign horror films. Mm-hmm. One of my... Okay. Before I get into this, I have to ask. Hannah, what is your opinion about the first-person found footage perspective? Like Blair Witch Project.
Oh, like Blair Witch Project, which I have seen also, actually.
Okay. Good. It's good. We're getting into this one now. Because this is a very divisive filmmaking topic.
I do not mind it.
You don't mind it?
No.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's good to know. That's good to know. All right. Because
you're gonna say because I hate it.
No. I personally like it.
Yeah.
I personally like it because it offers like a different kind of experience. Like some people might not like it due to like motion sickness or anything like that. Yeah. But
my mom calls those kind of things Dramamine films. Like the Born Identity.
Yeah, I know.
Those ones, she's like, man, you need some Dramamine to watch those movies.
It depends on like the okay. I think for films like that to really work, it depends on the subject matter, the reason why the camera's being used, and how it's being utilized.
Right.
One of my favorite horror films from the mid 2000s is a Spanish horror film from 2007 called Wreck. REC, like in like the record, like
okay. Wreck.
So what it is, it follows a television crew that's doing like a late night segment. They're following these firefighters as they go do a patrol thing, and then as they're recording things like that, like some like almost zombie or infection like situation comes down where they have to quarantine the entire building and everyone's trapped inside.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and for like a good like 20-30 minutes. Like the film's I think is only like 70 minutes long if I can remember.
Okay.
But there's like a good chunk of the film in the middle where like you talk to like all of they're like interviewing all of the residents and everything like that, and you can like start to see like them becoming like unhinged and suspicious and everything like that, and they're talking ill about the other neighbors. Like you have and like that's when I think that's like what's missing from like sometimes with horror films, like sometimes, especially when people are confined, when more than one or two people are confined within the same space, and they don't go into context about like how they feel about like some other people, like in kind of detail, and they do this in almost like an interview kind of style, like how they do for like small little 5-second snippets on news reports,
right? Yeah,
but you see it that it's raw and unedited, and they're doing this, and like you see like hints of like upperclassmen socialism, like refugee racism, things like that, and I'm like in a horror situation, like yeah, those kinds of things like will be brought up, especially if there's like something suspect going on in a situation like that.
Yeah,
and like I like seeing things like that because it ratchets up the tension.
Yeah.
And then when all hell breaks loose, like in the final third of the film, I'm not kidding you. For like a good chunk of the final third of the film, for about 15 minutes, I would say, it's all one continuous shot.
Ooh, I love that.
Especially in a first-person perspective, that's something. And during the entire things like that, like they're being chased, they're running up and down stairs, like power goes out and things like that.
Wow.
It's
oh, that's awesome.
I want to show you a scene from it. But I really do. Like no joke. I'll show it. But I'll send it to you later.
Okay, yeah.
Because we're in the middle of recording like that, and I just don't want to leave like a giant gap in the recording.
And it comes back, and we're both just, oh my gosh, that movie that you can't experience on a podcast was amazing.
Exactly. Oh my god. Oh jeez. But yeah, like I love like situations like that. Mm-hmm. Like you have like the chasing and like the overarching danger, but like you also have tension buildup. It was a nice little mix between them. And for first person perspective, that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah. Have when you were talking about that, it reminded me of this episode of The X-Files. I grew up watching The X-Files.
Great show.
Yep. And there was this one episode that it was filmed as though it was an episode of Cops. And Mulder and Scully showed up, and it was this paranormal thing where at first they thought it was a werewolf. It wasn't, but yeah, there was this. It was an episode of Cops with Mulder and Scully showing up to try and solve these ridiculous murders that kept on happening in this neighborhood, where there were people being bitten and people acting weird and all this stuff.
Oh my goodness!
So that's what I thought of.
I heard about that. I never saw that episode.
No, it's pretty good. I kind of like it. It was funny too. Like the X-Files is big. I'm talking while I'm eating popcorn. So I was gonna say, the X-Files is usually a pretty sort of serious show, but every once in a while they have a kind of funny episode,
which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there was one where they were trying to find this vampire that was really funny because they had screwed up the case and they were both telling their story from their perspective, and it was completely different based on what they thought was happening.
I love
that. He had this crazy lead that he was following, and of course I went with him because it was a crazy lead. And then in his version of the story, he's like, "Yep, and she was just reluctant at every turn and didn't believe me." And it was hilarious.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Oh man. Yeah, it's always fun going back and like watching like old shows and movies like that just to rediscover. It's like this is really good. It's got this and this and this, and then like for a long while, like a lot of like recent horror films, like it all started going like stale in certain parts where they just kept falling into all these different tropes. But I think in like the last 4 or 5 years or so, like they've been going into like a little new kind of renaissance, like exploring different avenues and things like that. One of my favorites that I recently watched within the past couple of years, like when it first came out, I don't know if it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, A Quiet Place.
That is literally...
You saw it!
Yes, I did! It's definitely on my top... It's definitely on my top 10. Because I love a movie that I can't see coming, and a movie that at the end of it, I watched it with my mom, and she had seen it before,
right?
And the very end, the very end,
yeah.
I had an audible and physical reaction to it.
Yeah,
the very end, like the shotgun. I was like, oh my god,
yes,
what? And, I love a movie where it gets that kind of reaction from me. Because usually on movie ends, I'm just like, huh. But yeah, A Quiet Place, yeah, I love it.
A Quiet Place for me, like, does, like, one thing that, like, a horror film really needs. It has such a good atmosphere. In horror films especially, and I've heard a lot of people, like, critics, like, fans of horror films, other, and just even, like, casual watchers say, like, atmosphere is everything in films. Because, like, it's its own kind of character itself.
Yep.
A Quiet Place
yep.
has one of the most unique atmospheres in a horror film. Mainly because, like, maybe less than 10 lines of dialogue, maybe, is said throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
Everything else is done through sign language or, facial expressions and reactions. It puts you into a sense of... It immerses you.
Yeah, after watching that movie, I literally found myself walking quietly, not talking.
Exactly. Like, and
I felt like I had to be quiet because I was immersed.
Yeah, during my viewing experience, like the theater I went to see the film usually has like a lot of like noisy patrons, like sometimes like doing commentary on films like that, and so I was like, this is the only place that's showing this film. Like I'm not going to enjoy this. Everyone in that theater did not talk.
Completely quiet.
It was unreal. Like there are some films that is so much better when you see it on like the big screen theaters as opposed to like in your own home theater with like surround sound and things like that. It's just there's some kind of like experience about it. Yeah. Which is why whenever I see like films, like old films being showed on like local theaters and screens and everything like that, I instantly jump on the opportunity. Speaking of which, if any of the local theaters start doing all three of the original Lord of the Rings films, we're going to see it.
For Gondor!
For Gondor!
For Frodo!
Death!
Ride now! Ride for ruin!
And the
Red
world's
Dawn! Oh, yeah.
Hashtag Rohan for life.
Oh, yes. Theoden is the like all of the memes that I send to people repeatedly are Theoden. Like, so it begins.
Yes.
I'll send that all the time.
He was like one of the best parts. He was like one of the best parts.
Oh man, yeah. What a great actor.
Amen.
Bernard something.
Bernard Hill, I think.
Bernard Hill. That's right.
He was also the captain of the Titanic in the 1997 Titanic film.
That's right. Let me see what else we got here. Oh man, I think A Quiet Place is kind of a good pinnacle to
like a good like recent horror film that's that good. I love.
Yeah,
and I know a lot of people say like some of the pinnacles of like modern horror are the films that Jordan Peele directed.
Like what?
Us and oh my god, how can I not remember these films? But okay, maybe you can help me remember this name. It's the horror film where basically it's an interracial couple, black man, white female. They go to visit the girlfriend's family, and basically like they're all like almost body snatchers or things like that.
Is that Us?
That might be Us, but I don't remember.
I'm trying to remember. It's the one where there's people who look exactly like them trying to kill them, right?
That one is Us.
That's Us. Okay.
That was the recent one. I'm thinking about his first project. Let me Google, help me.
Internet. Our first internet search on the podcast.
Indeed.
By the way, I need your Wi-Fi if I'm going to be recording here.
Oh, don't worry. I'll get out.
Tell it to me on the air.
No, not on the air.
And Donald's address is.
I'll text it to you later.
Awesome.
But it was Get Out. It was Get Out. That was the one.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one I was thinking of. I always like. I saw it, and it's a really good one.
Yeah.
But for me, I think A Quiet Place is perfect for like modern horror.
Yeah.
Like
because we live in such a noisy world.
Mm-hmm.
And just the quiet of it, and just because that's not really the way that we live in silence.
Yeah.
You know, I found myself getting used to it, and then whenever there was a sound, I was actually nervous because something was coming. You know.
Oh yeah, like when they accidentally dropped the lantern when
Or just the very beginning with the little boy with the rocket.
Oh my god,
yeah, no.
That opening!
That sucked so much because they got us used to the atmosphere. It was all quiet and they're all walking.
In 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then it went, and I literally the noise started, and I literally jumped and was like screamed because it was a noise. I was like, no, stop it, we gotta be quiet.
Like for me, and that's what I think. Like most horror films, like. Are perfect at a good horror film immerses you in the world, gets you used to the environment and how the rules work, and then flips it up and dials everything up to 11 to really take you in and bring you discomfort.
Yeah, and movies in general as well, you kind of show like the way things are and then you disrupt that, and that's the inciting incident.
Exactly. Like for me, like one of the earliest examples I can think of, like that has like a unique atmosphere, almost like Quiet Place has a unique atmosphere among horror films. Another horror film that has a unique atmosphere that's unlike any other is Evil Dead.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Okay,
Tell me about it.
All right, so Evil Dead basically, 5 friends go into the woods in order to have have like a weird kind of giveaway. They find a book that can summon spirits, accidentally say the words, and basically demonic possession starts happening. It is it's like early 80s cheese gore fest city. The director for the movie was Sam Raimi.
Okay.
So and he did the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy.
Okay.
Just didn't know if you know who he was.
I did not.
It was an indie film that has gained such a cult following because there's nothing like it. Because all of it was done on set, practical, like so much practical effects in terms of like the gore, the violence, and like the possession. It's just like A Quiet Place is like unique. Evil Dead is the same way for its own specific reasons, and that's what's like I think what's missing from like not just horror film cinema, but like a lot of just cinema in general.
Yep.
Like individuality.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, there are some sparks every now and again because, I mean, you have, like, all of the Marvel superhero films, like, even though they're all interconnected, they have their own, like, unique identity that sets them apart, even though they're a part of a giant universe.
Oh, man. We should have a whole conversation about Marvel.
I plan on it.
Yep.
Before next year comes around, in order to, get us ready, like, we need to talk about that.
All these topics we need to do.
Yeah. Oh my goodness!
I will have to actually watch all of those because there's some that I haven't seen.
I can probably get our hands on like all of the films.
Awesome.
So there's no problem on that.
Cool. Oh man.
But I mean, we should probably wrap this up.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So basically, for me, for horror films, like I said before, it's horror films need to be their own like experience. They need to bring you, believably immerse you into this world that has specific guidelines and dialogues, and whenever something disrupts it, that's when the true scares happen.
Yeah.
But even in that, even if it's not, even then, if it immerses you in there and it doesn't like go out of the way to like scare you like that, it can still be good. Like we said, like we both love the original Phantom of the Opera from 1925. So it usually comes down to personal enjoyment. Yep. But again, it's uniqueness and individuality that really, like, for horror films especially, are what make them shine.
Yeah.
How about you? Like,
me? I think what we talked about with A Quiet Place is really kind of my ideal of a horror film is that it's because I don't appreciate the sort of outright gore for no reason kind of thing, but the suspense is what really gets me, and I think that just this sort of showing you a norm and then unsettling it and disrupting it over and over again, and the anticipation of something's going to go wrong, it's kind of an outlet for that kind of worry that we have in our real lives about something's going to go wrong. Like, I know for me, if everything is going well, I think about it and I think, wait, what's going to happen?
Yeah, you always...
What's going on?
Right, you always go to like, how's this going to go to that?
How's this going to fall apart?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about like the purpose for things happening.
Yeah. And like catharsis as well. Like
exactly.
the ancient Greek tragedies. You watch something and you feel satisfied. You feel satisfied after seeing something horrific because it what is the definition of catharsis? It's like it's like a release.
Yeah, hold on.
I should know this.
we are theater people, but we still need to look up definitions.
Yeah. But yeah, it has to do with tragedy. It's sort of like, what does it say?
Okay, catharsis, the process of releasing and thereby providing relief from strong or repressed emotions.
Right. Yes. So when you're repressed, when you're mentally constipated, watch a horror film. That's my 2 cents.
And thank the Greek tragedies for being the earliest forms of horror films that there are.
Yep.
Amen.
Yep.
Amen to that. Medea, just Medea on that one.
Medea.
So, yeah. I think we can pretty much leave it off on that.
Yeah. All right.
Well, that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. Really. Oh man, Halloween may be over, but spooks are always constantly around us. So don't forget if you like me and Hannah just talking about whatever, just don't forget to follow the Don't forget to follow the podcast. I should have a Facebook page or something like that up in the meantime. I should, and we'll be posting this to let's see, SoundCloud, Spotify if we can get it on that. I should also post this to my I'll post it on my Twitch page at Ryuzaki MK7 just to get more of it out there. We want people to listen. We want to entertain and everything like that. Hannah, where can they check you out at?
Well,
if you do want to divulge,
I don't have anything right now that occurs to me. Really, I'm mostly just involved in other things. It's not really my own personal stuff. I don't really have. It's all collaboration.
That's
I'm a big collaborator. Maybe someday I'll plug some of the stuff that I'm collaborating with.
That's fair. But then we can just leave it off on that right now.
Just come and listen to us.
That's going to be the episode. Come and listen to us. Oh my goodness. So, that's it for right now. So until next time, I'm Donald. I'm
Hannah Kubiak.
And oh my goodness, that voice just gets me every single time. So until next time, guys, keep on keeping on, and most importantly, keep your geek on.
Keep your geek on.
Later, guys.